It seems the Iranians are feeling the reason the United States is called the world power, because the use of torpedo in war like this is a lesson other countries watch with goosebumps. Before we break how it happened, join the front line. Like, share, and subscribe, so we see you again. Because beneath that calm surface, off the coast of Sri Lanka, the black water of the Indian Ocean, a predator was waiting. And at 5:08 in the morning on March 4th, 2026, that silence exploded. A U.S. Navy submarine fired a torpedo that ripped through an Iranian warship and sent it straight to the bottom of the ocean. No warning, no dramatic chase, just one shot, and what the Pentagon later described as a quiet death. The target was the Iranian frigate Iris Dina, a 95-meter warship carrying roughly 180 sailors and armed with anti-ship missiles, naval guns, and air defense systems. But that morning, none of those weapons mattered, because the threat didn't come from the horizon, it came from below. And the story of how that torpedo found its target is one of the most intense naval moments in modern military history. But before we get to the explosion itself, we need to rewind the clock a few hours earlier, because the setting for this encounter makes the whole situation even more unbelievable. Just days before the attack, the Iris Dina wasn't preparing for combat. It was attending a naval event. The ship had just finished participating in a massive multinational naval exercise hosted by India, alongside dozens of ships from around the world. Picture the scene. Warships from different nations sailing together, officers shaking hands, sailors trading patches, helicopters buzzing overhead for demonstration flights. It's the military version of a networking conference. But once the exercise ended, the Dina began the long trip back toward Iran. And somewhere along that journey, about 40 nautical miles south of Galle, Sri Lanka, the ship entered a stretch of ocean where it thought it was completely safe. International waters. No active battle zone. No enemy ships on radar. At least, none that could be seen. Because miles away and hundreds of feet underwater, an American attack submarine was tracking the frigate. And submarines don't need radar. They hunt using sound. Every ship in the ocean produces a unique acoustic fingerprint. The rhythmic churn of propellers, the hum of engines, the subtle vibration of machinery. To a submarine's sonar operator, it's like listening to a giant underwater orchestra. And the Iris Dina had a very recognizable tune. Once the submarine locked onto that acoustic signature, the frigate effectively had a target painted on its hull. But here's where things get even more fascinating. Submarine warfare is not about dramatic explosions and constant firing. In fact, the opposite is true. Most of the time it's hours, sometimes days, of silent stalking. The submarine follows its target at a distance, calculating speed, direction, and the perfect firing solution. It's basically the world's deadliest math problem, and when the numbers finally align, that's when the captain gives the order. Fire! Now imagine what that moment looks like inside the submarine. The torpedo tube floods with seawater, pressure equalizes, and then suddenly, whoosh! A Mark 48 torpedo blasts out of the tube, leaving behind a trail of bubbles as it rockets toward the target at more than 50 knots. Think of it like a self-driving underwater missile. It doesn't just travel in a straight line, it listens. The torpedo's sensors track the sound of the enemy ship's propellers, constantly adjusting its course like a shark homing in on wounded prey. And here's the terrifying part for surface ships. By the time you realize a modern torpedo is coming, it's usually already too late. But the real devastation wasn't just from the torpedo itself. It was where it exploded. Because modern torpedoes aren't designed to hit the side of a ship. They're designed to detonate underneath it, and that changes everything. Instead of punching a hole in the hull, the explosion creates a massive bubble of superheated gas beneath the ship. For a split second, that bubble literally lifts thousands of tons of steel out of the water. Then the bubble collapses, and gravity does the rest. The ship's keel, the structural spine holding the entire vessel together, snaps under the stress. Naval engineers call this a keel break. Sailors call it something else. They call it the moment you know the ship isn't coming home. And on March 4th, 2026, That exact scenario unfolded beneath the Iris Dina. What happened in the next few seconds turned one of Iran's most modern frigates into a sinking wreck. But the explosion itself is only half the story. Because what happened immediately after the blast, on the deck of the ship, in the surrounding waters, and across the global military community, would send shockwaves far beyond the Indian Ocean. And that's where this story gets even more intense.